Hi guys, my name is Christy Casipio and today I'm going to show you how to make some super creepy finger lilies. The first thing that you're going to need for this tutorial is a finger mold. I sell the 5-finger mold in my Etsy shop, or you can also make a mold of your own finger. In this tutorial I will show you both. Now the first thing that we have to do is create the Spadix, which is the center part of a Calla lily. So go ahead and roll out a thin log of gum paste or fondant. If you do use fondant, make sure that you do use a lot of Tylose powder because you want to make sure that it does set up pretty fast. The most important part of molding your finger is making sure that the back of the finger stays rounded as well. You do not want it to be flat. Once you think you have all the impressions onto your piece of gum paste, go ahead and remove it from the mold. Then go ahead and use your thumb and fingers to smooth out the line on the side of your finger from the mold's edge. Once your line is gone, go ahead and cut off the excess gum paste and use a knife to create the lines on the back of your finger. You want to do it on the backs of both knuckles, and you want to make sure that you get a few lines to make it most realistic. After you've created the lines on the back of the finger, go ahead and taper the base of your finger down. So you're going to take an 18-inch wire and you're going to put egg whites or Tylose glue on it. And you're just going to go ahead and slide your finger onto your wire and use your fingers and thumbs to blend your finger onto the wire itself. Now once you have your finger attached, go ahead and take a sugar shaper and make sure that all of your lines are fully defined and that you didn't smudge any of the lines up on accident while you were placing it onto the wire. I always like to redefine the lines around the fingernails and the knuckle lines just to make sure that they're really going to pop out when I dust them. And then once you're satisfied with all the lines that you've created, just go ahead and set your finger aside to dry. You want to let it dry for a minimum of 1 day. If you don't think that it's hard enough, or if you feel like it's going to come off the wire, let it sit for 2 days. Now you can use the finger mold that I sell in my Etsy shop, or you can create your own finger mold. I created my own finger mold using Amazing Mold Putty, which is usually available at most craft stores such as Hobby Lobby, Michaels, and Joann Fabrics. Using your own finger mold is basically the same process as using the mold that I sell in my Etsy shop. You just have to be a little bit more careful about making sure that your lines on your fingers stay defined. Usually, if I use the mold that I made from my finger, I will put that mold with my gum paste in it in the freezer for about 5 to 10 minutes to get hard so that when I demold, I don't lose all the lines. And again, you're just going to go ahead and use an 18 gauge wire with Tylose glue or egg whites on it. Once you're satisfied with all the lines on your finger, go ahead and set it aside to dry for at least 1 full day. Now that your finger is completely dry, it's time to dust it. I use colors from thesugarart.com, and the colors that I'm using right now are deep brown, buttercup, exotic orange, pumpkin, and ruby. Now when you start to dust your finger, the first thing that you want to do is create a general base coat color. I also like to dust a little bit more heavily in the seams of the finger and also on the side with a little bit more pink because it gives your finger a little bit more realism and depth. Now once you have that base color, you're going to go ahead and take brown, and also you're going to take ruby, and you're just going to go ahead and dust it on the knuckles of your finger. Then you're going to go ahead and take a piece of paper towel and you're going to put a few drops of Everclear on it. Then you're going to use that paper towel to wipe off the dust that you just put on so that it only stays in the creases of your finger. You want to make sure that you're using Everclear for this step because it evaporates so quickly. Now because you're using Everclear and it does evaporate so quickly, it allows you to do layers. So you'll wipe off with your paper towel, you'll dust some more, you'll wipe off a little bit more. Then once you're satisfied with all your defined lines, go back with your base color again and just soften your lines up. Now that we're done dusting the finger, it's time to make the nail nice and shiny, and for that we're going to use Poppy Paint Super Shine. After I've added the first coat of Super Shine, I like to use a tiny bit of ivory mixed with the Super Shine and go back to get the little cuticle of your nail. After your finger is completely dry, we're going to go ahead and create the spathe, which is the outside petal. For that, you're going to go ahead and roll out gum paste extremely thin. I like to use a pasta machine to roll it out to a 3. Then you're going to go ahead and take an edible marker and you're going to draw a bunch of veins in red and in blue edible markers. You'll notice that I'm only doing my veining on half of my gum paste, and that's because once I finish my veining, I'm going to go ahead and fold my gum paste over on top of itself and put it through the pasta machine once more. This will give the super creepy and realistic effect of veins. After you've put your gum paste through your pasta roller again, you want to make sure that when you cut out your actual petal, that you cut it out with the veins going vertically. It actually just looks a little bit more realistic if they're going vertically rather than horizontally. In this tutorial, I'm using the Wilton cutter for the Calla Lily, but you can use any Calla Lily cutter that you have. To create the veining on the petals, we're going to use the Katy Ultimate Petal Veiner. Make sure that you press firmly on all the edges. You want to make sure that the veining really gets on there. Go ahead and remove your petal from the veiner and place it on your foam pad. Then use a ball tool to smooth the edges of your petal. After you're done with your ball tool, go ahead and use Tylose glue or egg whites to apply a little bit of the glue along the base of the Calla Lily. You want to make sure that you don't put it too far up because you do not want any of that glue to get on part of the gum paste that is not going to be covered by the petal. When you go to dust, if you do have any excess glue on the outside, that dust will not stick to your gum paste. Place your finger center in the exact center of your heart cutout, and then you're going to go ahead and fold the left edge over first, make sure that it's firmly attached, and then fold the right edge over. Once you have the edges attached, go ahead and use your fingers and thumbs to form the bottom of the lily by pushing the gum paste together and smoothing it out as best you can. Then use your fingers and thumbs to fold over the top edges of your lily. Folding over the top edges of the flower will give the flower more movement and also make it look more realistic. Once you're satisfied with all your edges, go ahead and set your flower aside to dry. You want to set it aside for at least 1 day before you start dusting. I'm also going to show you how to do one of the flowers without the veining, just so you can see the difference that the veiner makes. Another thing that I'm going to show you is how to create some creepy stitches on your flower. So just go ahead and use your Dresden tool, and you're going to create one line going from the midpoint of the heart straight up to the tip. Then you're going to go ahead and use a 1 tip to create holes on the sides of the line. You don't want the holes to be directly across from each other, you want them to be slightly angled, and that's just so the stitches look more realistic. Then place your piece of gum paste on your foam pad and use a ball tool to soften the edges. From this point on, it's the exact same procedure as the previous lily, folding the left side over and then folding the right side over on top of that. Once you're satisfied with the top edges of your flower, go ahead and set your flower aside to dry for at least 1 day. Now that our flower is completely dry, we're going to go ahead and use a bunch of powdered dust to color the flower itself. I get all of my dusts from the Sugar Art. I think the quality of them is really good. They're always finely ground, they work perfectly, and there's tons of different colors that you can get from them. The colors that I'm using today are Ruby, Exotic Orange, Pumpkin, Buttercup, and Ivory. Basically, you just want to make sure that you're dusting the edges a reddish pinkish color and also the base of your flower. You also want to get inside at the base of the finger just to give it a little bit more depth. Make sure that while you're dusting, you're getting the outside and the inside of the flower. If you're making the lily with the stitches, you also need to make sure that you dust in the seam that you created with your Dresden tool on both the inside and the outside of the flower. If you opted to create the lily with the stitches, you're going to need a parchment bag or a piping bag and some black royal icing. Then you're going to go ahead and pipe in your stitches as far as you can get into the base of your flower. If you're using a piping bag, I would recommend using a 1 tip. And it's also really important that you do this after dusting, otherwise you're going to have to go back and kind of dust off each little black stitch because you want to make sure that they don't blend in with your flower. Another creepy element that we're going to add to this flower that doesn't have any stitching in it is an ugly little wart, and it's going to be hairy. We're going to use some corn silk to create that hair. So go ahead and take a tiny little ball of gum paste or fondant and just go ahead and stick it anywhere you think it would look good on your flower. Make sure that it's really on there by just using a round sugar shaper to make sure that the edges are really pressed down. Next, you're going to go ahead and take your corn silk, which I've already dusted with a brown powdered color from the Sugar Art. And you're going to go ahead and use tweezers or a very fine needle to go ahead and insert those pieces into the wart itself. If you're having trouble using a fine needle, you can also use very fine tweezers to stick it into the center of the wart. Once you're satisfied with the amount of hairs you've added to your wart, go ahead and use a fine needle to create a little bit of texture to the wart by just poking a bunch of little tiny holes around it. And that's it, guys. Now you have a creepy bouquet of flowers that Leatherface would be proud to call his own. Thanks so much for watching my tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it.